Before you listen, if you enjoy the stories and want to hear more, then please consider subscribing. Most of you listening aren't subscribed, so please take this time to subscribe. Turn on notifications so you'll never miss a story and be the first to hear. You'll also be supporting me. Thank you. I've got a bone-chilling Tinder story that'll make you think, why set out swiping right? So it all started on a regular Friday night, just me, my phone, and a little boredom to spare. You know how it goes, scrolling through profiles, swiping left and right, trying to find that potential match that could bring a spark into my life. That's when I stumbled upon Jake's profile. His picture showed a guy with a dazzling smile, and his bio seemed genuine and funny. I thought, hey, this guy looks interesting. And without a second thought, I swiped right. To my surprise, we matched, and the chat window lit up with a hey there from him. Our conversation started off easygoing and fun. We shared jokes, talked about our favorite movies, and had similar tastes in music. I felt like I might have hit the jackpot. Finding someone I genuinely clicked with on a dating app is a rare gem. After a week of exchanging messages, he asked if I'd like to meet up for a drink at a bar he recommended. I thought, why not? He seems like a decent guy, and it could be a good time. So I agreed to our first date, excited but with a hint of nervousness, as anyone would be. The night of our date rolled around, and I found myself looking into the mirror, making sure I looked presentable. I chose a casual yet cute outfit, applied some makeup, and tried to ignore the nervousness in my stomach. As I headed out the door, my heart beat with a mix of anticipation and uncertainty. Walking into the bar, I spotted him right away. He was sitting at a corner table, just as he described himself in his profile, a charming smile, dark hair, and a friendly wave that beckoned me over. At first glance, he seemed like the kind of guy you want to bring home to meet your parents. We started talking, and I must admit, the conversation flowed smoothly. We laughed, we shared stories, and it felt like we'd known each other for much longer than we actually had. I could feel my nervousness melting away as we connected over our shared interests and silly anecdotes. But as the night fell, something shifted. Jake's eyes seemed to linger on me a bit too long, and his questions took on a more probing tone. He wanted to know every detail of my daily life, where I went to work, where I lived, and even the places I liked to hang out with my friends. It was starting to feel less like genuine curiosity and more like he was digging for information. I tried to brush off the uneasy feeling creeping up my spine, chalking it up to nerves or paranoia. Maybe he was just a bit awkward, right? But deep down, I had this strong feeling that something was off about him. As the days went by, things only got weirder. I started noticing him showing up at places I'd casually mentioned in our conversations. It was unnerving to be sipping coffee at my usual cafe, only to find him sitting at a nearby table, giving me that same intense stare he had at the bar. My heart would race, and I'd feel my hands trembling every time it happened. At first, I thought it might be a coincidence, but the frequency of these chance encounters was just too much to ignore. It felt like he was constantly watching me, like I was never truly alone. That's when it hit me. This guy was stalking me. As the days passed, the feeling of being watched intensified. It seemed like every move I made was being monitored, and I had the constant fear that someone was following me. But I couldn't be sure it was Jake. I had no concrete evidence, just a gut feeling that kept my nerves on edge. One evening, I was out with my friends at a small, cozy restaurant. We were laughing and chatting, trying to distract ourselves from the unsettling events of the past few days. I hadn't mentioned our plans to Jake, yet there he was lurking in the shadows outside the restaurant, like a ghost from my worst nightmares. I couldn't hold it in any longer. I stormed outside and confronted him. I said to him, "How did you find me here?" "This is not okay," I shouted while trying to keep my voice steady despite the fear bubbling within. He seemed unfazed, as if my anger and frustration were a mere inconvenience to him. "It's just a coincidence, babe. I must have a knack for finding you," he replied with a slight grin that gave me an ick. His casual dismissal of my concerns infuriated me, but I didn't want to escalate the situation further. I warned him to stay away and that I didn't want to see him again, hoping my words would finally make him back off. But deep down, I knew it wasn't going to be that easy. As the days turned into weeks, the stalking continued, and I felt like I was living in a never-ending nightmare. Anonymous messages started flooding my phone, filled with cryptic notes that suggested the sender knew everything about me. The gifts began to arrive at my workplace: flowers, chocolates, and other presents, all with no sender's name attached. My anxiety reached an all-time high, and I felt like I was constantly on edge, looking over my shoulder wherever I went. The simple act of walking to my car or being alone at home became moments of pure terror. Sleep was elusive, and every noise in the dark sent my heart racing. I confided in my closest friends about what was happening, and they encouraged me to report Jake to the authorities. It was time to put an end to this nightmare once and for all. With their support, I mustered the courage to go to the police and share my story. The police were sympathetic and understanding, but they needed evidence to take serious action. So I started documenting everything meticulously: the messages, the encounters, the gifts, hoping that it would be enough to prove that I was a victim of stalking. In the meantime, I obtained a restraining order against Jake, but even with the order in place, the fear didn't subside. I felt like I was trapped in a horror movie, with the villain lurking just around the corner, ready to strike at any moment. Then one day, I noticed something outside my apartment window that made my blood run cold. There, hidden among the leaves, was a small camera pointed directly at my living room. It was the final straw. I knew I had to act fast. I called the police immediately, and they launched a thorough investigation. It didn't take long for them to trace the camera back to Jake. The evidence was piling up, and finally, they had what they needed to arrest him. As the day of his arrest approached, I felt a mix of relief and fear. Relief that the nightmare might soon be over, but fear that it might escalate even further. I attended every court hearing, determined to see justice served. In the end, Jake was convicted of stalking and invasion of privacy. He was sentenced to a significant amount of time behind bars, and a weight was lifted off my shoulders. But the scars left by his actions will never fully heal. It all started on a rainy Saturday evening when I found myself swiping through the endless sea of profiles on the dating app. Most of the matches were the usual small talk and short-lived conversations that lead nowhere. But then, amidst the sea of mediocrity, there she was, Sarah. Her profile picture showed a girl with an adventurous glint in her eyes, a captivating smile that made my heart skip a beat. Her bio was short but intriguing, mentioning her love for exploring hidden gems in the city and trying out adrenaline-pumping activities. It was like she was beckoning me to dive into her world of thrill and excitement. I couldn't resist swiping right, and to my delight we matched. Our conversation started with a few lighthearted jokes, and we quickly found common ground in our love for quirky movies and offbeat travel destinations. There was something different about Sarah. She had this magnetic aura that drew me in, like a moth to a flame. As we chatted more, she mentioned a new movie that she was dying to watch, and to my surprise, it was one I had been curious about too. Perfect. I thought this could be a great opportunity to meet her and see if our connection is as strong in person as it is online. We decided to meet at the local theater for the movie. I couldn't help but feel a mix of excitement and nervousness as I made my way there. The raindrops fell gently on my umbrella, almost as if nature itself was setting the stage for this encounter. Arriving at the theater, I spotted Sarah waiting by the entrance. She looked even more stunning in person, and her smile lit up the rainy evening. We greeted each other with a warm hug, and any lingering awkwardness quickly faded away as we chatted like old friends. The movie was a wild ride, a thrilling mix of suspense and action that kept us on the edge of our seats. Sarah's excitement was infectious, and we laughed and gasped together at all the unexpected twists. It was like we were in sync, our emotions mirroring each other's throughout the film. After the movie, we decided to grab dinner at a cozy restaurant nearby. As we sat across from each other, I couldn't help but feel a strong connection growing between us. Our conversations flowed effortlessly, and I found myself hanging on to every word she said. But as the night went on, things took an unexpected turn. Sarah began sharing stories from her past, and they were far from the usual tales of childhood memories or past travels. No, these stories were something else entirely. She talked about sneaking into abandoned buildings with her friends, exploring the unknown, and seeking thrills in the most unconventional ways. It was like she had a secret life, filled with risky adventures and daredevil escapades. At first, I was intrigued by her boldness, but as she continued, my excitement turned into unease. Her story started to take a dark and unsettling turn. She mentioned getting into fights at parties, stealing street signs just for the thrill of it, and even hinted at questionable substances being involved in some of her escapades. It was like I was sitting across from a real-life adrenaline junkie, and the line between excitement and danger blurred in her presence. The glint in her eyes grew more intense, and her laughter became almost manic as she relived these wild experiences. It was as if she thrived on chaos and lived for the thrill of pushing boundaries. My mind was all over the place as I tried to process the reality of the person sitting in front of me. I couldn't help but wonder if she was exaggerating for effect or if her stories were actually true. Either way, it was clear that Sarah was not your average girl next door. She was a force of nature, living life on the edge, and I couldn't help but feel a mixture of fascination and fear. I found myself torn between the magnetic pull of her adventurous spirit and a nagging sense of caution in the back of my mind. I said to myself that there was more to Sarah than met the eye, and I wondered if getting involved with someone so unpredictable was a risk I was willing to take. As we were about to leave the restaurant, Sarah suggested we go to a nearby bar for drinks. I hesitated, feeling a mixture of excitement and trepidation, but decided to go along with it, hoping that maybe getting to know her in a different setting would shed some light on the enigma that was Sarah. However, the bar she took me to was far from the cozy, dimly lit spots I was used to. It was dark, loud, and filled with a crowd that seemed to exude an air of mystery and danger. My fear and uncertainty grew, and as she ordered shots like there was no tomorrow, I knew I had to make a decision. I tried to come up with an excuse to leave, but Sarah was persistent, almost relentless in her desire to keep the night going. It was like she had this magnetic hold on me, and I felt trapped in a situation that I wasn't sure I wanted to be in. Finally, I mustered up the courage to tell her that I had to leave. I made up some lame excuse about an early morning the next day, hoping it would be enough to let me escape this wild and unpredictable ride. Sarah looked disappointed, but I didn't wait around to see her reaction. I practically ran out of that bar, my heart pounding and my mind racing with a whirlwind of emotions. It was like I had narrowly escaped a storm that threatened to consume me. As I made my way home, I couldn't help but shudder at the thought of what might have happened if I had stayed any longer. Sarah was an enigma, a thrill seeker, and a force of nature all rolled into one. While I couldn't deny the excitement and allure of her adventurous spirit, I knew that getting involved with someone so unpredictable was a risk I wasn't willing to take. It was like stepping into the unknown, and I had to trust my gut and put my safety first. I unmatched with Sarah the moment I got home, and as I reflected on the whirlwind of a night, I couldn't help but feel grateful that I had made it out in one piece. This Tinder date had been a real-life roller coaster, thrilling, intense, and more than a little scary. Picture this, a Friday night, the city alive with the buzz of laughter and music, and me, sitting on my couch, swiping through the endless sea of profiles on Tinder. It had been a while since I tried my hand at online dating, and honestly, my previous experiences hadn't been all that thrilling. But there was something different about this particular night, a feeling of restlessness and a desire for adventure that tugged at my heart. As I swiped left and right, the profiles seemed to blend together, same old smiles, same old bios. But then, like a flicker of light in the darkness, her profile caught my eye. Samira, it read with a hint of mystery that piqued my curiosity. Her pictures showcased a captivating smile and a glint in her eyes that suggested she was a force to be reckoned with. Adventure and spontaneity seemed to radiate from her profile, and I couldn't help but be intrigued. Match, the app exclaimed, and the excitement in my chest grew. We started chatting, and from the very first message, I knew there was something special about our connection. The conversation flowed effortlessly, like two old friends catching up after years apart. We laughed at each other's jokes, shared anecdotes from our lives, and even discovered that we had similar taste in music and movies. As the night went on, our conversation became more animated, and I found myself feeling drawn to Samira's adventurous spirit. She spoke of exploring hidden gems in the city, seeking adrenaline-pumping activities, and living life to the fullest. It was like she had unlocked a hidden part of me that craved excitement and spontaneity. Without a second thought, I suggested we meet up. How about that trendy bar in the city you mentioned? I typed, fingers crossed for a positive response. Her reply came almost instantly, a simple "sounds perfect" that made my heart skip a beat. The night of our date approached, and I couldn't help but feel a mix of nerves and excitement. It had been a while since I had a real connection with someone, and I couldn't wait to see if the chemistry we had online would translate into the real world. As I stepped into the bar on that fateful evening, I scanned the room for Samira. There she was, sitting at a corner table, looking even more breathtaking in person. Her smile was contagious, and the glimmer of mischief in her eyes promised a night full of surprises. We greeted each other with a warm hug, and any lingering nerves quickly dissipated as we fell into conversation. The atmosphere was electric, and I felt like I was in the presence of someone who could breathe life into the most mundane of moments. We ordered drinks, and as the night went on we laughed, shared stories, and got to know each other on a deeper level. It was like time was suspended, and all that mattered was the connection we were building. I couldn't remember the last time I felt so comfortable at ease with someone. Soon, I excused myself to use the restroom, feeling a mix of excitement and anticipation for what the rest of the evening held. But as I made my way back to the table, something just felt off. Samira had our drinks ready, and she seemed even more animated than before. She had ordered more rounds while I was in the restroom. It was like she was buzzing with energy, and I wondered if the thrill of our connection was getting to her too. But as I took a sip of my drink, everything suddenly went hazy. The room began to spin, and my limbs felt heavy, like I was sinking into a pool of darkness. Panic rose in my chest as I struggled to stay conscious, but it was like I was losing control of my body. I tried to call out to Samira, but my voice was a mere whisper lost in the chaos of the bar. The next thing I knew, I woke up in a hospital bed, disoriented and confused. A nurse explained that I had been found unconscious in the restroom, and someone had called for help. Suddenly, fear gripped me tight as I realized my wallet and phone were both mysteriously missing. It was like a punch to the gut. Not only had I been drugged, but I had also been robbed. As I pieced together the events of that night, I couldn't help but wonder what had happened to Samira. It was like she had vanished into thin air, leaving me with nothing but unanswered questions and a lingering sense of betrayal. In the weeks that followed, the police launched an investigation, but there was no trace of Samira. It was like she was a ghost, a figment of my imagination that had disappeared without a trace. I couldn't help but feel like a fool, falling for someone's charm and allowing myself to be vulnerable. But amidst the pain and confusion, I learned some valuable lessons. I realized that not everyone on dating apps is who they seem to be, and it's essential to stay cautious and vigilant, especially when meeting someone for the first time. As time passed, I slowly picked up the pieces of my life, trying to move on from that haunting experience. It was a harsh reminder that danger can lurk in unexpected places, and it's crucial to prioritize safety above all else. Thanks for listening in. If you like these stories and want to hear more, then please subscribe and like and support this new channel. We have more stories for you to listen to.